When the transport shuttle touched down on the Galactic Academy's landing platform, nobody expected that a child carrying an ancient blade would change everything the galaxy thought it knew about humanity. But Kayla Vierne, the station's youngest combat instructor at 23 and the pride of the Zenthari warrior caste, was about to learn that wisdom doesn't always come with age or advanced technology. The human delegation descended the ramp in their formal attire, diplomats and officers moving with practiced precision. But it was the small figure at the end of the line that caught everyone's attention, a girl no taller than 4.5 feet, her dark hair pulled into a traditional bun, wearing a simple black hakama and carrying what looked like a museum piece across her back. Kayla watched from the observation deck, her luminescent violet eyes tracking the procession, her pointed ears twitching with curiosity beneath waves of silver hair that cascaded past her shoulders. "Is that a child?" her colleague Drex asked, his mandibles clicking with amusement. "The humans brought a child to the Galactic Combat Symposium?" Kayla studied the girl more carefully, noting the way she moved with her center of gravity low, her steps measured and deliberate despite her youth. "Ambassador Tanaka's daughter," Kayla said, accessing the arrival manifest on her datapad. "Yuki Tanaka, age 11. It says here she's demonstrating traditional Earth combat arts." Drex's laughter boomed through the observation deck. Traditional combat arts? With that primitive metal stick on her back? This symposium showcases the galaxy's finest warriors and their cutting-edge techniques, and the humans send a baby with a relic? Kayla felt a twinge of something she couldn't quite name. Was it defensive instinct or perhaps curiosity? She'd studied human history extensively since Earth joined the Galactic Federation 5 years ago, fascinated by their rapid evolution from planet-bound species to interstellar explorers. They were young, reckless, and fascinating. "Don't underestimate them," Kayla warned, but even she couldn't keep the skepticism from her voice. How could a child with an outdated weapon possibly contribute to a symposium attended by the galaxy's most advanced civilizations? The opening ceremony was held in the Grand Arena, a massive space that could simulate any environment imaginable through hard light technology and gravitational manipulation. Kayla took her place among the other instructors, her fitted black tactical pants and silver asymmetrical top marking her as a Zenthari combat specialist. She'd spent 6 years earning that position, mastering 17 different weapon systems and 12 martial disciplines. She was the youngest instructor in the Academy's 300-year history, and she'd worked impossibly hard to overcome those who said she was too young, too soft, too idealistic for the warrior caste. Now, watching this human child stand calmly amid warriors 2 or 3 times her age, Kayla felt an unexpected kinship. The arena filled with hundreds of species Zenthari with their luminescent skin and superior reflexes, Crothians with their 4 arms and crystalline armor plating, Vexians whose neural implants allowed them to process combat scenarios at superhuman speeds, and dozens more. Each instructor would demonstrate their civilization's combat philosophy over the next 3 days. The humans were scheduled for the final slot, traditionally reserved for the least significant presentations. Ambassador Tanaka, a distinguished man with silver-streaked hair and kind eyes, stood to introduce his daughter. "Honored delegates, combat masters, and students of the warrior's path," he began, his voice carrying despite its gentleness. "My daughter Yuki will demonstrate the art of Kenjutsu, the way of the sword, as practiced by the samurai warriors of ancient Japan." The murmurs started immediately. "Samurai?" Someone scoffed. "I've read about them. They use chemical combustion weapons and sharpen metal." How quaint. The Zenthari were exploring neighboring star systems when humans were still swinging swords at each other, another voice added. Kayla winced, but she couldn't entirely disagree. The Zenthari had a 15,000-year military history. What could a civilization that only achieved space flight a century ago possibly teach them? Yuki stepped forward, seemingly unbothered by the whispers and poorly concealed laughter. She was small and slight, her face still holding the roundness of childhood. But her eyes, Kayla noticed her eyes immediately, were calm and deep, like still water. The girl bowed formally, the movement precise and respectful, then drew the sword from the scabbard across her back. The blade sang as it emerged, a pure tone that somehow cut through the ambient noise of the arena. It was beautiful in its simplicity, slightly curved, about 30 inches long, the metal catching the light with a watery pattern that suggested countless hours of folding and tempering. "That's it?" Drex called out, his voice dripping with condescension. A sharpened piece of metal? I could cut through that with my plasma blade in a fraction of a second. Other instructors joined in. Can it interface with tactical systems? Does it have any smart capabilities? How does it function in zero-gravity or non-oxygen environments? Yuki waited until the questions and mockery faded, her expression never changing. When she spoke, her voice was clear and younger than Kayla expected, but it carried an odd authority. My sword doesn't need batteries, she said simply. It won't malfunction in electromagnetic pulses. It requires no ammunition, no power source, no maintenance beyond cleaning and respect. It will work in any environment where I have the strength to swing it, and it will still be working centuries after every weapon in this room has become obsolete. The silence that followed was profound. Kayla found herself leaning forward, her tactical analysis instincts engaging in a way they hadn't since she'd faced her own master's trials. The child was right, every weapon system in the arena, from plasma blades to quantum disruptors, had dependencies and failure points. More than that, Yuki continued, holding the blade horizontally before her, this sword was forged by my ancestor 400 years ago. It has been carried by 12 generations of my family. My great-great-great-grandfather carried it in battle. My grandmother carried it the day she defended her home from invasion. My mother carried it when she swore her oath as a Federation officer. It carries all of their strength, all of their courage, all of their wisdom. When I hold it, I am not alone. Kayla felt something shift in her chest, a recognition of a truth she'd never articulated. Her own people valued legacy and lineage, but they updated their weapons every few years, discarding the old for the new. The idea of a weapon as a living connection to the past was profound. Show us then, Kayla heard herself say, standing from her seat among the instructors. Show us what this sword can do that our weapons cannot. Yuki bowed again, this time with a small smile. I will need an opponent, she said. The arena erupted in noise. You can't be serious, Drex protested. She's a child. We could hurt her with even minimal force. But Kayla was already moving, descending the stairs to the arena floor. I will face her, she announced, drawing her plasma blade, a Zenthari masterwork that hummed with barely contained energy, its edge capable of cutting through starship hulls. I will use training settings. No lethal force. Yuki's father looked concerned, but the girl nodded calmly. Thank you, Instructor Viren, she said, and Kayla was startled that the child knew her name. They took positions 20 feet apart. The arena's AI established a combat zone and safety protocols. Kayla activated her tactical display, overlaying probability matrices and strike prediction algorithms across her vision standard Zenthari combat enhancement. She felt almost guilty. She had every advantage: height, reach, strength, speed, experience, and technology. This would be over in seconds. Begin, the arbiter announced. Kayla moved immediately, closing the distance with Zenthari speed, her plasma blade arcing toward Yuki in a controlled strike designed to disarm without injury. She was already planning how to make this look respectful, how to let the child save face despite the inevitable loss. The plasma blade never connected. Yuki wasn't where Kella's strike prediction said she would be. The girl had moved at the last possible instant, not away, but toward Kayla, inside the reach of the longer weapon. Kella's tactical display screamed warnings as she tried to adjust, but Yuki was already in motion, her sword describing a precise arc that struck Kella's wrist, not the edge, but the flat of the blade, exactly hard enough to numb Kella's fingers without causing damage. The plasma blade deactivated and fell from Kella's suddenly nerveless grip. The entire sequence took perhaps 2 seconds. The arena was utterly silent. Kayla stared at her empty hand, then at the child, who had stepped back into a neutral stance, sword held in a ready position that was somehow both relaxed and perfectly prepared. What just? Kayla couldn't finish the sentence. Her strike prediction had been perfect. The child couldn't have moved that fast. No human could process information quickly enough to react inside a Zenthari attack window. You relied on your technology to tell you where I would be, Yuki said quietly, lowering her sword. But my sword has no electronics to ping your sensors. You analyze my stance, my breathing, my micro-movements, all filtered through your computer. But I practice an art that was developed long before computers existed, created specifically to fight opponents while revealing nothing. Kayla picked up her plasma blade with her left hand, her right still tingling from the precisely controlled strike. She felt her face flush with luminescent color, the Zenthari equivalent of a blush. Again, she said, her voice tight. I wasn't ready. Yuki hesitated, glancing at her father who nodded slightly. As you wish, instructor. This time Kayla attacked with full Xanthari speed, employing the evasive patterns she'd mastered over years of training. She feinted high and struck low. She used her superior reach. She analyzed and adapted in real time. Yuki met every attack with minimal, precise movements, her sword always exactly where it needed to be. She didn't try to overpower Kella's strikes, she redirected them, used their momentum against them, turned strength into vulnerability. She moved like water, flowing around obstacles, and her sword seemed to be everywhere at once, despite being a single piece of metal. 3 exchanges later, Kayla found herself disarmed again, this time with Yuki's wooden scabbard pressed gently against her throat. The girl's breathing was elevated but controlled. She wasn't even sweating. Do you understand now? Yuki asked softly, stepping back and bowing. The sword isn't inferior because it's simple. It's perfect because it's simple. Every plasma blade in this arena is a tool. She raised her katana, this is an extension of myself. When I train, I don't learn to operate a weapon system. I become one with the blade. There is no lag between thought and action, no interface between intention and result. Just me, my will, and 400 years of ancestral wisdom guiding my hands. Kayla felt tears gathering in her eyes, a response that surprised her. She was a warrior, a combat instructor, someone who prided herself on emotional control. But something in this moment had cracked something open inside her. She'd spent her entire life pursuing perfection through advanced technique and technology, always trying to compensate for what she perceived as her shortcomings, her youth, her idealism, her softer instincts in a culture that valued hardness. And here was this child, this incredible child, demonstrating a perfection that came from simplicity, from connection, from tradition. I underestimated you, Kayla said, her voice thick with emotion. She didn't try to hide. I apologize, Yuki Tanaka. Will you teach me? The arena erupted, some in applause, others in shocked conversation. But Yuki simply smiled, a genuine expression of joy that made her look even younger. My father says that a sword, like a person, must be both hard and soft, the girl said. Hard enough to hold an edge, soft enough not to shatter. You are a great warrior, Instructor Viren. I would be honored to share what I know. Over the next 3 days, the symposium transformed. What began as a showcase of competing martial philosophies became a dialogue, with Yuki at the unexpected center. She demonstrated kata, formal patterns of movement that encoded centuries of tactical wisdom. She explained the philosophy of Bushido, the warrior's code that emphasized honor, self-discipline, and service over personal glory. She showed how meditation and breath control could enhance combat effectiveness without any technology. And most importantly, she sparred with anyone who asked, regardless of species or size. She lost sometimes. Her small stature and child strength were real disadvantages, but she never failed to surprise, to adapt, to demonstrate that ancient human wisdom had value even in a high-tech galaxy. Kayla spent every possible moment with her, learning not just the physical techniques, but the philosophy behind them. On the second evening, they sat together in the Academy's meditation garden, a space designed to simulate natural environments from across the galaxy. Kayla had set it to display a cherry blossom grove from Earth's Japan, the petals falling in slow, perfect spirals. Why did you choose me? Kayla asked, watching Yuki practice cleaning and oiling her sword with reverent care. For your demonstration. I mean, you could have called out someone more skeptical, made a bigger statement. Yuki considered the question while running a silk cloth along the blade with practiced movements. Because I saw in your eyes what I feel in my heart, she said finally. Everyone else looked at me with judgment or dismissal. You looked at me with curiosity. Even when you doubted, part of you wanted to understand. That's the most important quality for a warrior, not strength or speed, but the willingness to keep learning, to remain open. Kayla felt her luminescent skin pulse with emotion. I'm supposed to be the instructor here, she said, with a self-deprecating laugh. I'm more than twice your age, and you're teaching me lessons I should have learned years ago. Age doesn't equal wisdom, Yuki replied, sheathing her sword with a satisfying click. My sensei is 83 years old. He moves slowly now, his hands shake, but he understands the sword in ways I'm only beginning to grasp. You're young for your species, yes? People doubted you because of it. Kayla nodded. surprised by the insight. Always? The Zenthari expect their warriors to spend decades in training before taking significant positions. I was accelerated because of my aptitude, but I've always felt not quite legitimate. Like I have to constantly prove I deserve to be here. Then we are the same, Yuki said with a smile. And we both know that proving ourselves through arrogance or aggression is empty. Real strength is quiet. It doesn't need to shout. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the simulated cherry blossoms fall, and Kayla felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Peace. Not the absence of conflict, but a deeper harmony, a sense of being exactly where she needed to be. On the final day of the symposium, the Grand Arbiter announced an unexpected event, a demonstration tournament, with instructors and delegates volunteering to test their skills against others in friendly competition. It was meant to be a celebration, a way to end the symposium with excitement rather than dry lectures. Kayla watched with growing unease as the brackets formed. Most matches were between experienced adults, professionals treating it as a spirited exhibition. But when Drex's name appeared opposite Yuki's, she saw the glint in his eyes. The Crothian instructor had not forgiven the perceived humiliation of a human child showing up the gathered experts. This is wrong, Kayla protested to the arbiter. Drex outweighs her by 300 pounds. Even with safety protocols, the child accepted the match, the arbiter replied neutrally. Both parties have agreed to standard tournament safety parameters. We cannot show favoritism. Kayla found Yuki in the preparation area, calmly stretching and breathing through meditation exercises. You don't have to do this, Kayla said urgently. Drex is a four-armed Crothian combat master. He's fought in actual wars. This isn't like our match. I was holding back significantly. He's angry and wants to make a point. The safety protocols will prevent serious injury, but it's still going to hurt. Yuki opened her eyes, and Kayla was struck again by the depth she saw there. Too much wisdom for such a young face. I know, the girl said simply. But this is why I'm here, isn't it? Not to show that I'm better than anyone, but to show that the old ways, the simple ways, still have value. If I back down now, the lesson is incomplete. What lesson? Kayla demanded, her fear making her sharp. That humans are stubborn? That a child can be brave? You've already proven yourself. No, Yuki said, standing and checking her sword one final time. The lesson is that you don't need to be the biggest, the fastest, or the most advanced to have worth. That tradition and wisdom matter. That sometimes the galaxy's newest, youngest, smallest voice still deserves to be heard. She smiled at Kella's stricken expression. Don't worry, Instructor Vierne. I've been training since I was 6 years old. My father is a diplomat who travels to dangerous places, and he wanted me to be able to protect myself. I'm better than I look. The match began, with Drex radiating confidence, his forearms, each holding a different training weapon: staff, blade, shield, and shock baton. He was a whirlwind of attacks, using his multiple limbs to strike from impossible angles, creating a web of offense that seemed inescapable. Yuki disappeared into the attack pattern, her smaller size suddenly an advantage as she slipped between strikes that would have overwhelmed a larger opponent. Her sword moved in tight, controlled arcs, deflecting rather than blocking, redirecting force rather than opposing it. She wasn't trying to win through offense, she was making Drex defeat himself. The Crothian grew frustrated, attacking with more aggression and less precision. His superior strength meant nothing if he couldn't connect. His extra arms became a liability as his attacks tangled with each other. And through it all, Yuki remained calm, her breathing steady, her movements economical. She was demonstrating one of Kenjutsu's core principles: minimum effort, maximum efficiency. The end came suddenly. Drex overcommitted to a powerful downward strike, leaving his center exposed for just an instant. Yuki stepped in the same movement she'd used against Kayla and placed her sword against his primary chest plate. The touch, gentle but unmistakable. Point, match, victory. The arena exploded in applause. Drex stood frozen, all four arms still raised in his incomplete attack, staring at the small human who had bested him. Then, slowly, his mandibles spread in what Kayla had learned to recognize as a Crothian smile. Incredible, he said, lowering his weapons and bowing in the human style, a gesture of respect that sent another wave of applause through the crowd. I have fought for 40 years, and I have never encountered anything like that. Will you teach me, young master? Yuki bowed in return, her smile radiant. I would be honored, Instructor Drex. Over the next hour, The tournament continued, but everyone was talking about the human child and her ancient sword. Kayla watched as Yuki patiently answered questions, demonstrated techniques, and explained philosophy to warriors from a dozen species, all of whom had dismissed her just days earlier. She saw in Yuki something she aspired to be: someone who wielded strength without arrogance, who taught without condescension, who proved their worth through grace rather than domination. That evening, as the symposium concluded, Kayla found Yuki on the observation deck, watching Earth rise over the station's horizon, a blue-green jewel against the black of space. "You're going home tomorrow," Kayla said, trying to keep the sadness from her voice. Yuki nodded. "My father's delegation is complete, but I'm glad we came. I learned a lot." "You learned?" Kayla laughed. "You were the teacher here. You changed how this entire symposium thinks about combat, about tradition, about humanity." "Maybe," Yuki said thoughtfully. "But you taught me something too, Instructor Virn. You taught me that being young doesn't mean being less. That sometimes being first, being youngest, being different, those aren't weaknesses to apologize for. They're just different kinds of strength." Kayla felt her eyes burning again, her luminescent skin pulsing with emotion. "I'm going to miss you," she admitted. "I know it's strange, I've only known you 3 days. And you're a child?" Yuki supplied with a grin. "It's okay to say it. I am one. But warriors recognize each other, don't they? Regardless of age or species or anything else. We recognize the same commitment, the same passion." "Yes," Kayla agreed, and then, impulsively, she knelt down and pulled Yuki into a hug, a very un-Xanthari gesture, but one that felt absolutely right. The girl hugged back, fierce and warm. When they separated, Kayla reached up and unclasped the pendant from around her neck, a Xanthari warrior's token, marked with her family crest and combat achievements. "I want you to have this," she said, pressing it into Yuki's hand. "So you remember that you changed someone's mind, someone's heart. So you remember that your lesson was heard." Yuki's eyes widened, recognizing the significance of the gift. In turn, she reached into her bag and pulled out a small tando, a traditional Japanese knife, beautifully crafted but sized for practical use rather than combat. "My grandfather made this," she said. "It's a utility blade, used for everyday tasks. Not glamorous like a katana, but essential. He always said that a warrior's true character is shown not in the great battles, but in the small, daily choices to live with honor." Kayla accepted the blade with reverent hands, understanding that she was receiving something precious beyond measure. "I will treasure it," she promised. "And I will remember." The next morning, Kayla stood at the landing platform, watching the human delegation board their transport. Yuki turned at the ramp, found Kayla in the crowd, and bowed, a formal, precise movement that Kayla returned with all the respect she could convey. As the shuttle lifted off, Kayla touched the small tando at her belt and felt the weight of its meaning. A child had come to the Galactic Combat Symposium carrying an ancient sword, and everyone had laughed. But that child had taught them all a lesson they desperately needed: that progress isn't only about moving forward, that new civilizations bring old wisdom, that the smallest voice can carry the greatest truth. 3 months later, Kayla stood before her advanced combat class at the Galactic Academy, and for the first time, she didn't activate the tactical displays or holographic training systems. Instead, she held a simple wooden practice sword, carved in the style Yuki had shown her. Today, she told her surprised students, "We're going to learn about economy of movement, about fighting without technological assistance, about becoming one with your weapon rather than operating it. We're going to learn from a tradition 15,000 years older than the Xanthari warrior caste. A tradition kept alive by a civilization that only reached the stars in my grandmother's lifetime." She smiled, thinking of Yuki somewhere across the galaxy, probably teaching the same lesson to someone else who needed to hear it. "We're going to learn from a human child who understood better than any of us that true strength isn't about having the most advanced weapon, it's about the warrior spirit that wields it. She taught me that being young, being different, being the voice that others doubt, those aren't obstacles to overcome. They're the very things that let us see what others miss, teach what others overlook, change what others accept as unchangeable." Kayla raised the wooden sword in a formal salute, the movement precise and respectful, exactly as she'd been taught. "So today, we begin again. We go back to basics. We learn what humanity learned thousands of years ago and never forgot: that the simplest tool, wielded with skill and honor and wisdom, will always triumph over complexity wielded with arrogance." Her students stared at her in confusion. But Kayla just smiled, remembering an 11-year-old girl standing calmly in an arena full of skeptics, carrying a 400-year-old sword and the weight of her ancestors' wisdom. The galaxy had laughed at the samurai sword. They'd learned better, and Kayla would spend the rest of her life making sure that lesson was never forgotten. That the bridge Yuki had built between ancient human tradition and galactic modernity would grow stronger with each student she taught, each warrior she inspired. Each moment she chose to honor the truth that the smallest, youngest, most unlikely teacher had shown her that every voice matters, every tradition has value, and that sometimes the greatest warriors are the ones who win without fighting, who teach without preaching, who change the galaxy simply by being exactly who they are meant to be. Kayla touched the tonneau at her belt and whispered a promise to the stars. "I heard you, Yuki Tanaka. I will make sure the galaxy never stops listening."